Hi, writers and would-be writers. Nice to see you here today. Cami Osman here from Memory into Memoir. I wanted to spend a little time with you to talk about the book proposal. So that's what we're here to do today. I'm going to give you 10 questions, and if you can answer 4 of these in the positive, then I would say you may be ready to write your book proposal. So let me just start by telling you that there are a few different ways to publish, okay? The first way, and the long-standing way, is the traditional route, which is where a writer finds an agent, and that agent is responsible for shopping the book, okay? And the vehicle that an agent uses to shop the book is the book proposal. And hi, Jean. So I have you on 2 screens here. So I'm live on Facebook, and then I'm also I've got some people popping up on Zoom. So I may be looking back and forth here. So the book proposal is the thing that the agent takes over to a publishing house and says, "Hey, I have this author, and if you like this piece of real estate, then she's willing to sell it to you." And so the book proposal itself is quite a big document, okay? Mine, I think, for Second Wind was something like 75 pages, because it includes a number of sections and then a sample from the book, some sample chapters. So I have here 10 questions for you to ask yourself. And some of these are really crucial, important questions. The others you can develop as time goes on. So, all right. So question number 1. Do you know what your story is? Okay. If you don't know what story you're telling, you're probably not ready to write your book proposal. If you have a good sense that you're telling a story from your life, let's say we're talking about a memoir, that starts in 1989 and goes to 1992, or if you have a sense that you're telling the story of all of the times you've told lies, and so you're working with a theme in your memoir, if you're really clear about what the story is, then you may be ready to write your book proposal. Okay. Now the second question is, do you know what your message is? And the message is different than the story, okay? So take my book, for example, Second Wind. In that book, I was telling the story of a woman who was running a marathon on every continent, okay? So that's the story. But the message really is about being a strong person, being a strong woman in the face of adversity. So if you know what your message is, it's going to be a bonus for you when you write that book proposal, because a lot of publishers are really looking for memoirs with a clear message or takeaway for the reader. Now, if you're writing a self-help book, obviously knowing the story isn't nearly as important as knowing the message. So it sort of depends on what kind of material you're working with. And some of the questions later on down the list will be more crucial if you're writing self-help or a prescriptive book. But number 1, let's just go over these again. Do you know what your story is? Are you really clear about what your story is? And number 2, do you know what your message is? Okay, if you can say yes to both of those, you may be ready to write your book proposal. Question number 3, do you believe in your book? When we get down further on the list to some of the other questions, you'll see why this is important. But suffice it to say that when you put your book out into the world, you're also putting yourself out for criticism. And so it's really important that you believe in this book and that you are sure that you really want this book out in the world. If there's any question about that, you're probably not ready to write your book proposal. But if you're sure that you believe in what you're working on, it's possible that you could be ready to get this proposal underway. When I work with authors in writing their book proposals, one of the things that we work on in coaching is to get really clear, not only about what the message is and what the takeaways are and what the arc of the story is, but we try to get really clear about whether or not they can get behind this material, even under attack. Okay, so that's really important. Question number 4. Do you know who you want to reach with this book that you're writing? A big part of the book proposal is making it clear to a publisher that you know who you want to reach and how you want to reach them. It used to be, before I was ever publishing, that once a book was sold to a publisher, they would take over the marketing of the book. That is not the case much anymore. Sometimes for really big authors, obviously, they're going to put a lot of money and energy into getting a book out into the public. But for first-time authors, while there will be some support in terms of marketing, you will largely be the advocate for your book. And so thus, question number 3, do you believe in it? But question number 4, do you know who you want to reach? If you do, it's going to be a lot easier for you to make the case that this is a book that the market needs. So the clearer you are about your niche, if you are someone who's saying, I think everyone will love my book, while that may be true, everyone is really hard to reach in marketing. So the clearer you are about the niche, even if it seems you want it to be not too narrow, but also not too wide. So it needs to be a group of people that you really do believe will benefit from reading your book, even if your book is a story. And there's nothing wrong with just wanting to entertain with a memoir, but it's important that you know who you want to entertain in order to sell the book. So do you know who you want to reach is question number 4. Okay, question number 5. Do you have an idea about how to reach those people? It's not that you need to be a marketing expert, okay? What is important, though, is that you have a sense of where those people are that you want to reach with your material, with your book. So if you have absolutely no thought at all about where you might market or how you might get the word out to the people that you think could read your book and appreciate it, you'll want to start to do some research. And there's a lot of great books out there. One that I really love to recommend is called Platform by Michael Hyatt, Hyatt. It's a terrific kind of rundown of all the possible ways to reach the people that you think may love to buy your book and read it if only they knew it was out there. Okay, so if you have some ideas about how to reach the people that you think will love your book, you're going to be you'll have a step up in terms of writing your proposal. One of the sections in the proposal is the marketing section, and so when I work with authors to build their proposals, I'm really working in that section on figuring out ways you can reach people locally, radio stations that you know would appreciate doing an interview with you. If you have groups that you already belong to, you'll want to maximize on your connection with those groups. If you have a blog and you already have a readership, that's a bonus. That's going to come up in one of the questions in a couple of minutes. If you know someone who might be willing to get the word out. So any way that you have or any thought that you have about how to get the word out about your book, or your willingness to put in the time and energy to become someone who will market the book, that's going to be a major bonus. Now, you don't necessarily need to know all of that before you write your proposal, okay? But in the process of writing the proposal, you'll want to do enough research so that you can speak to that. Okay, question number 6. Do you know which books you want your book to be compared to? So in the book proposal, there is a section called competitive and comparative titles. And in this section, what you're doing is you're identifying books which probably go on the shelf next to your book, or you're identifying books that your readership also reads. And with some of those books are going to be books that you'll be competing with. Like, is there another book about hiking the Pacific Crest Trail? Oh, yes, there is. It's wild. So that would be a competitive title, okay? A comparative title, it would also be a comparative title in that case. A comparative title would be a book that would augment your book, or would give your readers a little more than what that book gave. So, so for an example, with Second Wind, with my book, I put Women Who Run with the Wolves. It's not a running book. It's not a travel book, but it is a comparative book in the sense that it really addresses women's empowerment. So while I was addressing it entirely from an experiential perspective, Women Who Run with the Wolves addresses it from a theoretical perspective. So I could say that my book could augment, or it could implement, the principles in Women Who Run with the Wolves. So some of these books will be, your competitors. Some will be augmenting your material, but in any case, it'll be the same readers. Again, with this question, before you start your proposal, you don't necessarily have to know the answer to that question, but you will want to research it. So my next question is, have you read those books? And I can just tell you that it's a lot easier to write this section of the proposal, the comparative competitive titles, if you have read the books that fit into your category, or that your readers also read. And the reason is because it's a lot easier to speak to. It's a lot easier to speak to how your book is going to touch those readers if you've read those books. Now, one or two of the books in my proposal, I did just go to the bookstore and thumb through. I did the research on how many books were sold of that other book, and enough research on the authors to be able to speak intelligently. But the books that I felt like I could really speak to the best were the ones that I had already read. The reason that I put this question in is because I know a lot of times as writers, when we're working on something, a memoir about hiking the PCT, or or a self-help book about how to take a stand at work, that you might have a tendency. Hi, Jess Stone. I just saw her jump on the FaceTime. So you might have a tendency to feel like you don't want the influence of other authors coming at you while you're writing. And I totally understand that. At the same time, I think that in some ways, if you do know what they're writing, even as you're writing your material, you can have a sense of how yours is different. And you can even get ideas about how to make it different, but complementary. So that reminds me of something that I really wanted to make sure to mention. It's that if there's no other book like your book out there, there may not be a market for it. So while you want your book to be different, of course, you want it to hook a publisher in a way that another book wouldn't, you also don't want to be doing something that there's no market for at all. So this is kind of a fine line in terms of how you make the case that your book is different than others, but similar enough that there's actually a bookshelf at the bookstore for the genre you're writing. So question number 8. And if you all who are on FaceTime have questions, you can type those in. And those of you who are on Zoom, you can type those in too. There's a little chat button at the bottom of your screen if you have questions. And I can also unmute everybody on the Zoom in a couple of minutes, and if there are questions, we can address those. All right, number 8. Question number 8. Are you willing to build an online presence and to be visible? We authors are often introverts, and I myself am an introvert. I can spend a lot of time alone, and when I went to publish Second Wind and discovered that I needed to spend as much time online marketing my book and blogging and connecting with other bloggers as I did writing the book, I will admit to having some dismay about that. The world that we live in right now, in terms of publishing, is not one where we authors hand our books over to a publisher and they take it from there. They are really looking for authors who know how to reach readers. And knowing how to reach readers is being online. Now, that being said, there are other routes to publishing besides the traditional route. And however, I will say that if you're self-publishing or you're doing some kind of hybrid publishing, in that case, almost double you need to be online. Unless all you really care about is getting your books to your family and friends. If that's the case, and there's nothing wrong with that, then you don't need to have an online presence probably. But you are going to pay to have your book published, and you're going to peddle it out of the back of your car, which could be totally fun. So, I'm not knocking it because I haven't tried it. But the online presence is something that you'll need to be willing to do. So are you willing to build an online presence is an important question to ask yourself. So with that question, I also want to say, if your answer is no to that, if that just makes you shudder, there are probably ways that you could hire someone else to do a lot of that work for you. So just know that you would be hiring somebody to be posing as you online. And I'm not really sure if that would give your readers the same kind of connection to you as you being available yourself. So that is maybe a question to work with. Question number 9. Are you ready to take criticism without letting it crush you? Hold on, I have a question. What types of online presence platforms should an emerging author use? Okay, good question, Cookie Stevens. So here's something interesting. So Cookie, can you tell me, are you writing a memoir or are you writing a prescriptive book? So if you put that up, I can probably address your specific question more easily. And in the meantime, I will say a couple of other things about that. Creative nonfiction poetry, okay. So here's the thing, with what sells, okay, what makes money is often not the sale of the book itself, okay, at least for the author. What makes money is usually some kind of back-end program. So while I made an advance from Second Wind and Beyond Belief, and I've made a little bit of money from my running manual that I published on Amazon, by and large, the money that I make is coming from working with authors and supporting other people in writing their books and in my women's empowerment program. So where I have focused my platform building is in connecting with authors and connecting with women who are seeking out women's empowerment. And of course, with runners, because my book, Second Wind, was about running. So when I'm working with my online platform, I'm doing a few things. I'm writing a blog. So for about 7 years, I kept a blog on running. And I had hundreds of readers over the years. Many of them connected with me personally by email or met me at races, invited me to talk at their book clubs. So it was fairly local, okay? It doesn't have to be massive. I stayed pretty connected to my niche and built that platform with runners. And then recently I've been blogging for writers. If you can guest blog anywhere, that's great. Reach out to other bloggers who are working in your field. Build a list, an email list using MailChimp or something like that. And in your case, Cookie, if you're writing poetry, you might send out prompts, for example. Get other people to play with you. Find some kind of connection with other people who will be interested in your material and really play with them. Lots of giving. Give away things for free. Give them 3 words and ask them to write a poem. Invite them to tell their stories on your blog. Facebook is great. I think you can only have like or it used to be you could only have 5,000 friends. So I don't know now. If you like whatever the social networking platform is that you like best, focus on that. Okay. If you like Twitter, focus on building a following. Always offer content, gifts, some kind of offering so that you are giving away your, not necessarily your material, but giving away of yourself in some way, and that will build your following. So I'm not sure if that answers your question or not, Cookie. I have a course where I go into this and really help people build their blogging platform. And if you want to email me individually, I can also send you a list of books to look at that will help you really think through how you can best build your platform for your own purposes. And my email is clostman@live.com, or you can send me your email through a Facebook message too. That's totally good. So other questions about that before I go on to question 9? Okay. So question number 9 was, are you ready to take criticism without letting it crush you? And you don't have to be ready for this right now before you write your proposal, but I would recommend that you just give yourself a good think. Because when you start putting yourself out there, whether it's online, say you're going to write a poem on your blog every week, okay? Somebody's going to write you back and say that's a stupid poem. Somebody is going to criticize you online. I've had some nasty things happen online, and I've had some nasty reviews. It hurts. It's hard. You're going to cry. But if you know that it's coming and it doesn't necessarily reflect anything about you as a person, and you have good support system, then you may be ready to enter the fray of publishing your book. Now, if you are someone with a tender heart, which I am, and you think that even a little bit of criticism, like even your critique group, you know, if they say this line bumped me and you really feel that deep inside, I would recommend that you start working with a coach as soon as you can to help build the thicker layer of skin that you're going to need when you start shopping your material. Because for every acceptance, there's usually a lot of rejection, which brings me to my last question. Are you ready to bounce back from rejection? Rejection does not mean that there is anything wrong with your material. It may mean that. There may be something with your material that needs to be fleshed out or revised or worked on in order for it to capture an audience like you want to capture. But a rejection doesn't necessarily mean that at all. It may only mean that you haven't found the right partner. See, every book publisher and every agent for that matter, they are out there looking for the book that will really knock their socks off. So if your book isn't it doesn't mean they hate it or they think there's no market for it. It just simply means that it's not the book for them. So when you start to shop your proposal out there to agents or to editors and you start getting rejections, take a look at how they're rejecting you. You know, if they're simply saying, you know, this book isn't for me, the book isn't for them. If they're giving you information about what's wrong with the book or why they don't think there's a market for it, then, you know, that may be really good information for you to take into account. Okay, so let me just go back over the first 4, which I think are the most important questions. If you say yes to these 4, you're probably ready to start working on your book proposal, all right? Do you know what your story is? In other words, do you know the story arc? Number 2, do you know what your message is? So the theme inside the storyline, are you clear about what the theme is? Number 3, do you believe in your book? Can you really put your whole heart and soul behind this book enough to push through the fear, the self-criticism, the resistance to building an online platform? Can you really get behind your book? And number 4, do you know who you want to reach? Do you have a face in mind of somebody that you want to read this material? If you can answer yes to those 4 questions, you are probably ready to write your material, your book proposal, that is. So I just want to let you know that, and I'll take questions here in a second in case Jean or Erin or anybody else who's on Facebook Live has a question. I want to let you know that I have a 6-part series coming up to support people who are ready to write their proposals. And if you are interested in working with me, I want you to send me an email at clostman@live.com and let me know that you're interested in exploring that with me, and we'll have a short chat about that. I want to make sure that whoever jumps into it's a group coaching program, and whoever jumps into it is ready to go, and so that I can support you the best. You'll also get an individual coaching session with me and a read through of your query letter from Laura Kalpakian. I don't know anybody better to help you pitch your proposal to an agent. So we have a lot of good stuff lined up. It starts in June. I'm just looking at my calendar. June 14th, which is a Thursday, and it's 2 Thursdays in June, July, and August. And I'm going to walk you through, I'm going to give you a template of the book proposal, and walk you through each section of it, and help you choose the sample chapters that you want to include. And so by the end of that time, you'll have to do the writing, but by the end of that time, you will have a book proposal if you put the time in on the writing. All of the videos will be recorded, so if you have to miss one, because I know it's vacation season, it'll be there for you. So send me an email if you're interested in that. Any questions? Hi, Marion. I see that you joined on Facebook Live. And Jean, Erin, if you have a question, you can wave at me or unmute yourself. Jean, you good?
I'm good, yeah.
Okay, good, great. And if there's no more questions on Facebook Live, super. Well, it's good to spend this half an hour with you all, and I hope that you have a sense of whether or not you're ready. And I would love to be a resource for you, even if I am not the coach, to work with you on getting your proposal out into the world. I certainly have a Rolodex. Nobody really has Rolodexes anymore, but I have people in my cell phone that I can refer you to. So we'd just love to connect with you and support you, and let you get your work out into the world, because if you're here, it's because you believe that you have something to say. And I believe that too. So have a great afternoon, and I will catch up with you soon. Bye-bye. Bye, Jean.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
All righty, you too.
Thanks.